Morning, this is the House Appropriations Committee. It is Wednesday, April 29th, 2026. It's just after 10 a.m. and we have the wonderful folks from the Joint Fiscal Office here to talk to us about fun fiscal facts and other good things, I'm sure. So thanks for coming in this morning.
Welcome. For the record, Emily Byrne from the Joint Fiscal Office.
Normally, wait, Grady Nixon, Joint Fiscal.
Real quick, so we're not here to talk about fiscal facts. We're here to talk about a different thing called fast facts.
Fast facts, sorry, I knew it was.
I'm just gonna intro it as to where we got here and then have Grady speak more about them specifically and more in depth about why we're doing this. But so we, last summer, we're thinking about how there are lots of questions that we get over and over and over again at the Joint Fiscal Office, and which is good, right? That there's things that people are thinking about. And it's not all from legislators, right? We also get them from the public and from lots of audiences, and tried to think through a way that we can make that information more easily accessible to the public, to legislators. I want to say it was done for the purposes of saying here, read this. And then if you have more questions, but it also sort of simplifies correspondence and providing information so that it's consistent across analysts and whatnot. So we developed this fast facts type thing. The goal is that it's 2 pages, and thought it would be a good thing to more formally introduce. They've been out, when did you publish them? March?
February.
We were a little busy then.
Yeah, just a little bit. We published the first 5. We have some more in the works. We've started to talking about what to do this summer, but that was the sort of how we got there, what we're thinking about, as opposed to here's an issue brief. It's 19 pages long and it has a lot of charts, right? To keep stuff simple, to link you to more information. So that was the sort of where this idea came from, what we've done. Grady dive in even further, show you them on the website. And then there are some quick things that you guys can all think of as we walk through them, of things that it would be not, or and similarly, you all probably get lots of questions, the same questions on things, right? So if there are things, everybody always asks me, what's the computer modernization fund? And why do we keep putting money into it, right? If there was a 1-pager that said, this is the purpose, this is the statutory reference, et cetera, this is the report on it annually, then you could just hand that to your colleagues similarly. So that's sort of where it came from.
Great.
So that's the big picture. I'll let Grady take it from here. Elaborate more on
The E board and the Joint Fiscal Committee, because lots of times people want to put legislation in to have, and think that those 2 committees can do all kinds of things that they don't necessarily do.
That's a good one. I'm gonna write that down. I'm gonna start a list.
Okay.
Yeah, so Emily, I think, summed everything up very nicely. It's a pretty simple idea, but just for the small picture. As Emily said, we wanted to have a document that's not so in-depth as a report and not so detailed as an issue brief. We basically wanted these to be simple, high-level documents that we could either pass off to a legislator that is asking us a question, or for a legislator to hand a document to their constituents that would be more readily publicly accessible than some of those deeper documents. So if you have constituents asking you questions, we hear a lot about the higher ed trust fund in the news these days. What is that? Then you have a document yourselves that you can pass off to a constituent as well. And then to that point as well, just making sure that we have uniform information on these sort of weedy topics. So the idea we had is there are a lot of these perennial thorny issues that can be complicated. And we just thought that we could do a better job simply explaining them. And something we were focusing on for these is really the idea that this is a 1 to 2 page primer on a subject. It's not meant to make anyone a subject area expert. It's not meant to provide the answers to every single question you might have. The idea is really to give someone enough information that then they might know what questions they want to ask about that subject going forward. So just give you just enough information that people can actually have a thoughtful and considerate conversation. Or, say you have a bill and it's on a subject that you know nothing about, you might be able to go to our website and get up to speed a lot faster than you would otherwise. So on our website right now, if you click on publications, and the website doesn't freeze. And then go to Fast Facts here under other publications. So you'll see still on the left, we have fiscal notes, Fast Facts, the fiscal focused newsletter, issue briefs and reports. On the bottom right here, you have Fast Facts on the right column under other publications. And as Emily said, right now we have 5 published.
Oh, interesting what the very first one is.
It's a complete coincidence.
Should have showed up.
So right now we have one on the higher ed trust fund. We have one on gasoline taxes, one on cannabis tax revenue, one on the pension plus payments, and one on local option taxes. So I'll just go to I'll pick a random one, the first one, that's easy. So this is a document we put together on the higher education trust fund, and you'll see we say what it is up top. That's just a quick 1 to 2 sentence executive summary explaining what the fund is, what its purpose is, and when it was created. And then we say how it works. So we tell you just right at the top, how money gets into the fund, who manages it. In this case, it's the state treasurer, and then how money gets out of the fund. So the higher education trust fund, the most important source of revenue in terms of this legislation, this legislative session that's being discussed, is that excess estate tax revenue. So any revenue above 125% of estate tax revenue that's forecast in the consensus forecast is then directed to the higher education endowment trust fund. And then in statute, the treasurer can withdraw up to 5% of the fund balance based on a rolling average of the past 12 quarters. That goes equally to UVM, the Vermont State College's VSAC, to provide non-loan financial aid to Vermont students at Vermont post-secondary institutions. And then there's provision that allows for up to 2% of that fund balance to be distributed equally to UVM and Vermont State Colleges to increase the endowment if they have private endowment match. And then on the second page, we have a little bit more detail on how the fund's been performing and a graph just showing authorized distributions from the fund from 2000 to 2025. And then something that we also thought would be important for these documents, given that these are just sort of a primer, is in each of these, we've tried to then say, where can you go to learn more? Where can you access more information about these?
That's great, because yes, I would want to see the statute, and I could now click on the statute. Top.
This looks great. I love it. I wish you had it 10 years ago. Sorry. But in 1999, we talked about this. Was it part of Act 60 or was it Act 60 adjacent? Was it created as part of the? No, I know, but I'm sure there's somebody in the attic that knows. I'm just curious. We talked about that when we talked about the trust fund, that it was set up in 1999, which is when we did Act 60.
So it was established in Act 27, 1999.
Adjacent to, it wasn't part of Act 60.
Right.
Great. That's all I need.
And that's a great example of, I wrote this one and I don't have that off the top of my head, but the document had a quick access to the resource where we could find the answer to that.
And you put the right thing in there for you to answer that question. So it works.
Tom Little came in here when we were discussing some of this a while ago, and he was in the legislature, and he was the one who was instrumental in helping set it up. He was representing Shelburne or wherever he lives. And he said basically it was UVM, Vermont State Colleges, VSAC, all was fighting over how they were going to get money allocated for their scholarships or whatever they had. And they came up with this fund, this setup, and that was the intent, and that's what they did. And it performed pretty well. I guess there had been we went through a period in the early 90s, late 80s or something where there were well-to-do people. Buck Freeman's father died, and then Buck Freeman, I mean, it was the way that they had this money coming in that was not something you could count on. You couldn't put it in the budget, but there were things that they needed to use it for.
Right.
And so they thought this would be a good place to put this. It's sort of a windfall money. And there's a steady amount all the time, but the windfall money were important. So I believe Howard Dean covered his deficit with Buck Freeman's.
Yeah, so Buck Freeman, it's owned AIG, the insurance company.
Yeah.
And they were in Stowe.
$14 million. And it was like
The estate tax.
Yes.
Yeah.
But the point is that that was what he saw this as a way to create a fund that would help with higher education scholarships. And it's been here since.
So that was the first one.
One
Yeah.
thing I would just throw out there too, our plan is to update them every year, right? So once we have like a big library, that'll be part of it. Like right now, the summers, we're gonna build, in addition to all the other reports and analyses and meetings and stuff that we're supporting, we'll try to build out the library and then work on, right, if there's any statutory revision, we'll make sure that they're up to date. If they're, all of these, since they're gonna be financial, are gonna have new fiscal years worth of information, we'll get those added. So that it's like they're not static. Sometimes with issue briefs and sort of those sorts of things, they're incredibly useful. And after a while, the data becomes static, right? So like by keeping them short and sweet, we can keep them up to date.
Yeah.
More easily. So.
Go ahead, Martha.
I like that you have kept the format of your publications very, very similar, but these are slightly different. These are purple.
Exactly.
That's the lights. Very helpful.
Yes. And you're matching the fiscal facts today.
Oh, today, yes.
That's why we picked
The
the
fast facts. Fast facts.
You must have known, so, yeah.
No, but I think that it
does, yeah.
ties it in with the whole marketing scheme of your
branding.
website, your branding. But you've made this one purple.
Yeah, we didn't want to go too far away from the, iconic JFO branding.
That's right. And it is like,
And purple is fun.
And so, as Emily noted, the goal is to produce a significant number of these over the off session so that we have a bit of a library for the next biennium and then update them each year so that they're current and remain useful. And then, as Emily said at the beginning, just kicking this off, we definitely want to hear from legislators on what subjects would be helpful for them. So the chair mentioned the sort of statutory powers of the Joint Fiscal Committee and the Emergency Board. That would be a great one. If you have any other ideas, and also not just things that come up in your legislative work when you're in the building, but questions that you get frequently asked by constituents. Because again, the idea here is that it's not just something that JFO can hand to a legislator, but it's something a legislator can hand to a constituent.
and sound like we know what we're talking about. It's great. Excellent. So pension plus.
Oh, on that one. Sorry, I cut you off.
So sometimes I find myself in a situation where I don't have a Chris group right next to me. And this one is great for that, when you're in that sort of nightmare situation. So this document goes into the pension plus payments. And it breaks down what the history was in the overview. So you'll see, as part of the broader pension reform effort in Act 114, the General Assembly committed to make additional state contributions to the state employees retirement system and the state teachers retirement system. This is what's known as the plus payments. And they're made in addition to the actuarially determined employer contributions. These began in FY24 at $9 million per system. We're $12 million per system in FY25 and will be $15 million per system in FY26 and in each subsequent year until the respective systems are 90% funded. And then again, we have some background information that goes more in depth. And then on the second page, you'll see the impact of that. And this, again, is just to sort of synthesize this information quickly on this complicated subject. So you'll see what the intent was, the background information on that, and then the actual progress that that's been making. So figure 1 shows the unfunded liability of VSERS, and then figure 2 shows the unfunded liability for VSTERS.
And so is that line that's going across not just artistic, but getting to the idea of we're closer to 90%?
Exactly. So that's the expected unfunded liability balance at the end of the fiscal year. And then this one is a 3-pager, which we're hoping to keep these to 2 pages, but then on the third page, this shows just the breakdown of employer pension costs in FY 27, which is just some specific fiscal year information that is helpful for legislators in understanding pension costs. So you'll see it breaks out the unfunded liability payment, the employer normal cost, and then the plus payment, which is the little green bar on top, which is 15 million for both systems in FY 26 and going forward.
So if we hadn't gotten behind and made the legislature or the governor had made the choices in the 90s, we wouldn't be paying 107 million to VSERS and 177 million to the teachers. That's almost 300 million plus the 215s. It's a lot of money we're paying for that decision.
Yeah.
Bad choice.
Yeah.
Go ahead.
Never mind. I'll take us down a rabbit hole. I'll ask somebody else later.
Okay.
And then I'll just show you one more just so you understand. Again, this is one for local option taxes that Chris Roop and Ted Barnett put together. Again, it just briefly explains in the overview section that statute allows for Vermont municipalities to adopt local option taxes at a rate of 1% on sales, meals and alcohol, rooms, or any combination of those three on track transactions that occur in the municipality. And then it explains that there's currently 38 municipalities.
Hold on. Excuse me.
That levy a lot. And so that is a great example of something that each year we would update. Next year, there will presumably be a different number. And then in the call out box here, the main thing that would be important for a legislator to quickly understand is the percentage rate of the lot, and then also what that breakdown is. So you'll see here, as of October 1st, 2025, lot revenue is apportioned 75% to the municipality and 25% to the pilot special fund. And then in the how it works section here, again, you'll see the bit of historical context. The recent split was 70-30. This was changed in 2025 per Act 57 to increase the municipal share to 75%. And then the General Assembly explains what the pilot special fund does. And so this is one of those things, again, where when we talk about lots, we're also talking about the pilot special fund. And so it's on its face, it should be a simple thing, but then it gets more complicated. And we just wanted to figure out a way to quickly bring all that information together so someone could understand the whole scope of this picture rather quickly. And so this just explains there's the general payments in lieu of taxes, pilots, to municipalities that host tax exempt state owned buildings such as park infrastructure, AOT garages, office buildings, and VST buildings. And then it explains that there's 192,000 for corrections pilot payments, and then other uses that are largely for municipal programs and support. You'll remember that in the budget adjustment and your budget bill, the pilot special fund was used to pay for the appropriation section B139 for grand list litigation assistance. And then on page 2, you'll see this is a bit of the context of the changing pilot special fund revenue and expenditure and ending balance in this graph here. And as the committee might recall, part of the reason that the pilot special fund split between municipalities and the pilot special fund was changed was because in recent history, there was not enough money in the fund to fully cover pilot payments. In more recent history, the fund actually has a surplus. And so there's been discussion of what to do with that surplus and what the split between municipalities and the pilot special fund ought to be. And so this just, again, briefly goes through that context, that historical context, so that when someone is discussing whether or not to change that split or what to do with the pilot funds and how much surplus is in that fund, that the General Assembly has a bit more understanding of that.
And is there statute that looked at, or is this mostly? Or is there something statute about things?
Yes, so that's something that we actually missed on this one. Apparently, we should have that final section here, and we can update that to have where to So there is the pilot,
Yeah.
exactly.
Two statute.
One thing that will be tricky to link is the appropriations piece, right? Because it's gonna be buried all across the budget.
Right.
That's what that table will show, right? With the reference to the act number and the section of the budget and the authorization of lot and the pilot special funds. We will add as a link.
Use that to our excellent. Excellent.
Oh, yeah, cannabis.
Yeah, so we also have ones on cannabis taxes and gasoline taxes.
Gas taxes, that's right.
And then we're currently working on a couple of other ones that we're hoping to publish soon. And then, of course, again, if any of you have ideas about things that you think would be, well suited for this type of document, please let us know.
Just,
Go ahead. Wayne.
just on your little footnote on page 1, number 2 down the bottom. The A&R pilot, Fish and Wildlife is using probably a mix of general fund and special fund from the wildlife fund. Which is only important because they don't usually get much general fund.
Which one's that one?
Page 1, the very bottom little sub 2. It's down there.
Is that, which,
In the pilot, I'll pull it up briefly.
So that's saying our DEC would have all general fund, but, or maybe not.
I should remember this.
So Fish and Wildlife, no.
Well, back in the old days, we didn't have any general fund at all, so it was always being paid out of that Fish and Wildlife special fund. But now they don't get too much, it might be a mix. I'm sure it's gonna change.
And the calculation of the pilot payment for A&R, that might be another good one to follow up. The calculation of the pilot payment for A&R is different.
Yes,
than
right.
the calculation of the pilot payment for
That could be a
buildings.
fast bet.
And I think the buildings are treated different from the
Land.
A&R buildings are in lot payments, but the land isn't, we'll work on it.
There's another.
Stay tuned.
Add it to the summer project.
Vote 2027.
All the Fish and Wildlife lands were bought with federal money, or have federal money all involved, so I would assume that would enter into play.
And yeah, again, that's exactly what we're hoping that these documents can do, is get everyone on sort of a level footing in terms of the basic information relating to these, so that then you know exactly what questions you want to follow up with and get drilled down deeper into each of these subjects.
This is really nice to have. I'll have to think about what constituents ask, then I can say here.
Well, education funding is, obviously always a big question.
Try to explain that in
There are
2 pages.
parameters as well that, that Jill has provided for ways and means.
Right, you could do all the math pieces across and we can hand that to them and then they could go, oh, well, now I understand why I don't understand it, right?
But the other piece that it comes across, the information is nonpartisan. And so, posting something like this on Front Porch Forum or giving it out,
Right.
if I handed something out to somebody just because they would think that it had a bent to it that came from where and it's like, no, this is what at least the House system believes. This is what the House, nonpartisan, knowledgeable people have put together. And I love the idea of the footnotes, or the links, because again, you can look it up. We're not experts at all. And so the old idea of saying, hey, you can look it up yourself, doesn't usually go very far unless the link is live and it goes someplace. So thank you for making it so.
Right, and I think too, they'll build on each other too, right? Like I think the gas tax one is a good example of we can't do a 2-pager on the T fund. It's big, it's complicated, there's a lot going on there, but we can do a 1-pager on the gas tax and on the diesel tax and on the DMV fees and some specific, how does this program work? And over time, right? Kind of building here are all the pieces. Right. One about sales tax and education fund, like there's lots of,
Liquor funds, gambling funds.
that's one we get a lot of questions about.
Yeah, because.
Where's all the sports wagering money?
Right, so much, and the same
You
with
wanna go down that
cannabis,
rabbit
and it would be
I
good
forgot where it went already.
when you update cannabis to also show, what the consensus revenue forecast has over a couple of years, because it's just not going to be $300 million or, all the stuff that people think it's going to be. So that, you have it up through projected FY 26, but you could do the forecast and just to add it to.
What will happen when Marlboro can sell joints?
Be nice if this all would automatically update, but that's probably.
I don't think that's going to happen.
He's about to pitch you on AI.
This is Grady-o-matic here, or Chris or whoever, JFO, great. Thank you, guys. You're always coming up with
Yeah,
wonderful.
If you think of anything, you know how to find us.
Yes.
We
It's really nice to see what you did on your spring vacation.
Cool. I'm sure there's a gazillion things to do. We can look through the budget and find out lots of stuff. So thank you very much. This is great. We're gonna move right into the library. Oh.
We do.
Okay. See you all later. Can't come in and out, but,
Ted is gonna be a little late,
okay,
but he said he did run over if we need,
who is,
and Tucker's.
Tucker's here, Tucker's a library person.
We're gonna vote on it.
We are not gonna vote on it till Thursday, because it's gonna be on the floor next week, so we don't wanna mess things up. But this is when we had it scheduled, so we'll continue that. We lost Lynn, it's hers as well. But Tucker, do you wanna come up and talk? And I see that we have Rep Brown here from House Education. You must be the reporter on the
Yes.
education side.
I'll be required to develop.
Okay, so if we end up having more policy questions, we'll ask you to come up as well. And then we'll have Tucker at some point, but in the meantime, we have Tucker, we'll have Ted. All right, welcome.
Good morning, Tucker Anderson, Legislative Counsel. Excited to be one half of Tucker and Ted's excellent adventure through the life.
Before you start,
Yes,
make sure in your phone you can show.
I do, but I don't show pictures of my babies on the live stream just because there's,
Yeah.
Privacy.
But I do have a very adorable 3.5-week-old right now.
3.5 people?
Yeah, who does sleep very well, which is
If
why.
you want to stay here and
Rested.
sleep on our chairs, you're welcome to.
Very
pet your cat now.
comfortable.
Oh my God. Oh, congratulations.
Thank you.
Is this your first?
Second, yes, both massive, uncontrollable boys so far. Yeah, the new one, Hugo, is already trying to slither all over the place, which is a bad sign because his older brother is 2 and like 3 feet tall and like 45 pounds and can reach everything on the counter, but doesn't have the cognitive capacity to know what knives are yet or why we should snap the child safety lock off the drawer and take a knife out and swing it around the house at the dogs and stuff like that. So
You guys are having a fun time.
that's bad signs for the future. They'll fit in
Wait till they're 13.
the Vermont wilderness for sure.
Well, we're glad that you made it here, and we
Thank you.
promise not to swing knives or do anything too weird.
If you did, I'd be used to it.
You know what to do.
We have a protocol in place.
Okay.
You should have S-232 as passed the Senate. I skipped section 1 because they are factual findings of the General Assembly and typically don't find their way into my testimony because they are your investigative findings and legislative counsel won't correct them unless there's a legal assertion in there that is inaccurate. Assure you that in those 5 instances of findings, there are no legal assertions that need to be corrected. So we'll skip to section 2. Vermont Libraries Day. The overview is there will be created a Vermont Libraries Day, third Monday in October. And before I proceed, just want to flag, there's no appropriations in the bill. My understanding is that it perhaps came here because it went to Senate appropriations, because originally there was a division in how a certain grant fund would be split between state entities for purposes of disseminating those funds down. That's been stripped out. So there's also no impact in how state spending will be carried out procedurally. But I'll flag that for you as we go through.
Okay, so if there ever was a whiff of an appropriation at any point in the history of this bill, we get it.
Get it?
Yeah.
There was a whiff.
Okay.
A ghost of appropriation.
Yes, that's right. All right.
Section 3 amends the after-school summer reading and early education special fund language in two different sections in Title 16. So first in 16 VSA Section 51 in the Universal After-School and Summer Special Fund, the high-level overview is that language is added to ensure that public libraries are called out as an eligible recipient of these grant funds. Then the Agency of Education is given discretion to allocate a portion of the funds to the Department of Libraries. So the Department of Libraries would be the only state department that could kind of represent sub-recipients and apply for a grant here. That's on page 3, by the way. And then additionally, there's authority for a coalition or group of libraries to come together to apply as a single applicant.
So this doesn't change the amount that comes from the cannabis. It's just expanding allowable uses for that same amount of money.
It allows the Department of Libraries to apply for some of that money to then give sub-grants to public libraries. It also allows a group of public libraries to apply as one entity.
Oh, okay.
The next big change is the addition of that subdivision E, if you're on page 3, line 10, which essentially requires the agency to create a shorter, simpler application process for certain types of nonprofit entities. So they're called out as small community-based organizations such as rural public libraries. In subsection B, which governs the composition of the current advisory committee for this program, the state librarian is added as the 9th member of that advisory committee. And then finally, at the top of page 4, new language in subsection E requires on an annual basis the advisory committee to hold public input hearings. In section 4, the early education grant fund statute is amended to just ensure that public libraries are expressly called out. So public libraries are already included in the larger categorical descriptions in this section. There's just an including clause so that you can see expressly public libraries are included as eligible recipients. Section 5 amends the duties of the Department of Libraries to ensure, you can go all the way through pages 4 and 5 here, that within their duties, it's recognized that the department now has digital and physical collections of materials. It's not just physical collections anymore. And at the end, the duty to, discretionary authority to provide book service by mail or book wagon is struck, and there's just a general reference to interlibrary loan. So my apologies to all of the fans of the book wagon, but it doesn't get a call out anymore.
Book wagon.
Wagon.
When did that go away? I mean, like the actual book wagon.
I've seen one in the last.
In the education committees in both chambers now, I've testified that I was from a community in Massachusetts where the book wagon was vital and still exists to this day. It's a minivan with a box of books in the back.
I love it. The mobile library. Well, yeah. So there, yeah.
A few years ago, there was one.
There was a great story that took place in Kentucky about they would go on horseback to these Appalachian communities and deliver books. on horseback, one woman was like the librarian thing. True stories, very interesting, yeah.
I've heard of riding courts, but now there's riding libraries too. That's.
Oh, yes, and in fact, this is an area, I'm really going off topic here, but it wasn't a library. There was a genetic thing that a lot of these, there was a group of families that had blue skin. Yeah, it's a real thing. I mean, you can look it up and see pictures. And so one of the women who had blue skin was actually one of the women who did the libraries on the books and encountered issues, as you can imagine, of blue skin. It was really interesting, but it was about libraries. People want books, doesn't matter where you are. Okay.
Okay, we're on section 6, page 6, line 7. This is statutory construction related to the authority of municipal corporations to appoint library trustees for public libraries. There's a problem that's teed up by the definition of public libraries for purposes of this entire title, which is that it includes private libraries that are open to the public. And this particular subsection of law was being interpreted by some towns to allow their legislative bodies to appoint the trustees of private libraries. So this new language attempts to control that interpretation of law.
Do we have many private libraries?
Many, yes. So in fact, there's a lot of what are known as trust libraries that are incorporated under Title 22, where there was an endowment at some point to establish a library, and there's a trust that is overseen, of course, by library trustees. And in the past, in Vermont law, there was a lot of specific language separating the duties of the formerly very important municipal office of the trustees of public funds from library trustees, because they are separate corporations. There you go. Section 7 relates to municipal bonding for public library improvements. Flag for the other committees, no substantive change to the law here. Municipal corporations already had authority to issue bonds for public library improvements and for private library improvements. The amendments that you're seeing here just eliminate some confusion, because private libraries had a specific call out in this subchapter, but public libraries did not. So this adds in terms for public libraries so that it's clear, yes, you can bond for improvements to public libraries as well. Finally, in section 8, there's the repeal of the audio visual revolving fund. Don't know if Ted included that in some of his testimony, what is in the fund, what it relates to, but by and large, the statutory terms around this is that the receipts that went into this fund are exclusively those from postage for mailing certain library materials, such as CD-ROM and DVDs. Things like that.
I'm reading the fund is no longer relevant as AV material is treated the same as other library materials.
Yes. There you go. And that's it. The effective date is July 1st, 2026.
Okay. Anybody have any questions about this? Seems pretty straightforward.
Could we just delete a special fund?
Yeah. Well, did we delete a special fund?
Yeah, you repealed it.
Well, good on us.
Well, good on that.
Yeah, thank you. We are, that's 399 more to go. Great. Thank you, Tucker. I don't see Ted. Have you heard back? Rep Brown, is there anything you want to add to this?
I think that walkthrough with Tucker was excellent. I think he covered everything. I don't have anything to add unless
Okay.
there are questions.
Great. I'm not seeing any, and I do want to let Ted have his 30 seconds of fame on this. So why don't we go off live until Ted shows up instead of us staring at the screen?